Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. We are back with an all-star investor, someone who's been on the channel multiple years. And yes, folks, just confirmed he's back for 2022. We wanted to ask your opinion last week, and you guys blew up the comments. So I want to thank you for all the great feedback on Mr. Greg Dickerson. I think I had over 150 comments, Greg, and that is not normal. Everybody, huge thumbs up. So you're back for 2022.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to thank everybody for their kind words. I read the comments and happy to be back for 2022. And I think we'll have a very special January surprise episode for them in terms of how to accomplish whatever it is they want to do in 2022. So if there's something specific you guys want to do that you want us to talk about, I'm not going to say goal because I look at things very differently, as you all have come to realize. But your plan for 2022, and there's a difference between a goal and a plan, and we're going to talk about that. So whatever your plan for 2022 is, post it in the comments below, and Michael and I will put that plan together and show you how to achieve it faster than you ever thought.
Folks, Greg is offering you the ability to be mentored by him. Right below what your plans are for 2022, we will review them together, and we will do future videos on those. So that is an amazing gift he has just given you. So I hope everybody blows up comments below. So while we wait for those, Greg, today we're going to talk about a spectacular call you had last week. It made me think. I spent 7 days digging in, and I think you are right. 100%. We are just started what you called the great deleverage. I love that word. Some people call it the everything bubble. I actually think the great deleverage is a better title for it. So why don't you talk about the call you made, and then we can talk about where people might see it first and next, because I think there's a series of things that might come down the pipe. But let's first talk about the call, because it was awesome, folks. This was last week, so go watch it.
Yeah, the great deleveraging, is how I call it. And right now there is a big debate. Are we in bubbles? Or are we just over leveraged? In other words, is there too much liquidity in the system? And if you look around the world, we're a global economy now. Everything is related, everything is connected, and all markets all across the world, financial markets, real estate markets, all assets, commodities, bonds, it doesn't matter what it is, everything is way overinflated, and there's too much liquidity out there. And that needs to unwind, and we need to deleverage to get back to normal levels. So that's basically what's going on. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the Fed handles this, because they basically lost credibility with ignoring inflation, ignoring the consequences of the monetative easing and the fiscal policy that they've been on since March of 2020, because it does affect the world's global economy and the asset valuations that we have around the world. So we're going to see some deleveraging. We're already seeing it now, liquidity coming out of the system, asset prices reducing back to normal levels of valuations. And you're already seeing banks around the world where countries are allowing their banks to reduce the amount of reserves that they have on account and things like that, which is actually more leverage. The less reserves, the more leverage you have. We're going to see those things start to change where, lending is going to tighten up, bank reserve requirements are going to increase, those types of things. It's an interesting time, very interesting week ahead with what the Fed is going to come out and say. I thought they would start raising rates this year. I was wrong about that, but I think it's going to come Q1 next year. I don't think it's going to be Q2, Q3. Wow. I think we're going to see something start Q1 next year.
Yeah, that's amazing, folks. Really, when I look at this, because again, you brought it up last week, it was an episode that people jumped all over. So that was awesome. But I actually spent some time, and I was trying to see where would the deleverage happen first. And I think it happened in, I don't know what I would call it, the high tech, high valuation stocks. I looked at Zoom, for example, right? Zoom at one time, I think it was 156x revenue. That is not normal, right? I've been in tech my whole life. That is not normal for the tech boom, right? The dot-com crash didn't see kind of those numbers. So we saw those, and they're down now to, I think, 28 or 29. So we saw a lot of that froth, or whatever you want to call it, exuberance taken out of some very big high flyers, like, even Robinhood and some of these other players. I think that's where you saw it first. We've obviously seen crypto. I think crypto's down again this morning, kind of pulling back. And again, crypto is interesting because of all the leverage that is in the system, right? The 100-to-1 that you brought to us a month ago is like frightening to think about. 100-to-1 leverage. No wonder there's $2.5 billion was lost 2 weekends ago or something. So again, there's a lot of leverage in the system, but as this ripples through and as the Fed tightens, there's actually 20 Fed or central banks meeting around the world this week. So it's not only the US, the biggest, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, all these others. So it is the monetary policy, the helicopter money is stopping. And the question is, how fast are they going to suck out excess reserve? So I think the great deleverage has started. Great call, but I think there's obviously a lot more to go.
Yeah, it starts in risk assets. So for people watching, risk assets, so that's stocks, that's cryptos, anywhere the appetite for risk is high, that's where you're going to see the deleveraging, form first. And, we've already seen markets snap back a little bit from the first episode a couple of weeks ago when Omicron came out and everybody was kind of worried about that. That was an initial knee-jerk reaction to a potential, shutdown. It was an excuse, to start the deleveraging process,
right,
and kind of a trigger. And, how fast that will accelerate and how deep it will go, will largely depend on what the Fed, central banks around the world decide to do about it, what they can do about it, how that affects things. Now, some of it's going to be rotational and cyclical, like you said. You're going to see growth stocks, and you're going to see tech stocks and all those things start to rotate. It is the end of the year. Typically, we see a Santa Claus rally. Why do you see that? Well, number one, bonuses. It's bonus time. So how does Wall Street meet bonuses? You can see Wall Street behind me. How do they get their bonuses? Moving capital, cashing in, generating returns. You're going to see some liquidations for stock losses, for taxes, those types of things. You can sell stocks, you can sell cryptos at a loss, write that off, then you can buy them back in the first of the year. Crypto has less of a waiting period, I think, than stocks do. Really interesting how crypto is actually, the push is to label crypto, most of the crypto assets as property versus, securities. So we'll see how that all comes out and where that, ship lands. But, at the end of the day, we are going to see some deleveraging. Things are way overvalued. Everybody knows it. It's funny, there still are a couple of people out there calling inflation transitory.
Oh my God. Come on now, people.
It's transitory and, it's all supply chain shock, not demand driven, that's going on.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll see what shakes out.
Anybody who's still calling it transitory doesn't know how to read, right? I broke down the last CPI reading. Everything is rent, food, and gas. Right, or fuel, right, for heating and cars. It's not transitory.
Now, I did read something that they're going to change the way that they're measuring inflation, and they're going to revise their recent readings. Have you read anything on that?
I haven't read that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
it's funny. We'll talk about this in episode number 2, but I'll leave the tease right here. One of the great things about CPI is you can actually understand the math, and one of the greatest factors I've talked about is missing is rent. Right, rent equivalent for single family homes, they've only reported 3.5%. The reason they do that is, historically speaking, there was no great way to figure it out. So they did a survey. Now we have companies like Invitation Homes with 80,000 single family homes. So there's actually sources of information. So I actually did the math, and we'll save the number for episode 2. But let's just say CPI was not 6.8%. It was substantially worse. So
and real inflation at the consumer level, like we talked about, I mean, it's got to be double digits, mid double digits, 15%, if not more. I mean, everybody who's listening, watching, and most of the realistic commentators around the world, I mean, all you got to do is step outside your house. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it is. It is literally everywhere. It's just bad. And again, I remember it being a 70s kid, right? Where the fuel shortage or the fuel OPEC embargo, it's as bad as that, if not worse, right? Double digit inflation is not good.
The difference is we have plenty of jobs. So, back then you had an unemployment situation too on top of it. So it's a different kind of a thing this time. And again, I'm not saying, markets are going to crash, world's coming to an end. Are we in bubbles? Absolutely, we're in bubbles. But the question is, when they pop, how far back do they go? And, what are we going to see? Crypto, for instance, generally has 80% pullbacks, every several years. and even 30 to 40% along the way. And we haven't quite hit 30 to 40%. I guess we're getting close to 40% now from the recent highs, but there's still a little bit of a ways to go there. And then the real question is, how quickly does it snap back? We've already seen the market snap back to record levels again, so it's really interesting what's going on and where the markets are going to end up. But you could lose 30% of the value in the stock market, NASDAQ, S&P, and get back on a normal path. And there's a lot of information out there about how dangerously overvalued all that is right now. And, one of the biggest speculators out there, Cathie Wood, I mean, she's taking it on the chin right now in every
I called that 6 months ago. Yeah. I'm like, guys, you're following this. She's out over her skis. This is that worked 2 years
What's
ago.
really funny is, people will say, oh, she's got a long-term view. Well, you can take a long-term view of anything and say anything's going to be worth 10x more 20 years from now or 10 years from now and use that as an excuse. But which has been the case. I mean, we've been in a major bull run in the stock market, for what, 20 years now?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, Cathie Wood is interesting because she's always talking about 5 years. I think it's permission for her to have bad years. I think that's it's a marketing scheme, right? She's picking stocks and frankly overpaying. She's got to be down 30% this year because everything she's touched has turned. 2 years ago, everything she touched turned to gold, and whatever the reverse of gold is, it's turned to lead now.
Well, I mean, how does she make her money?
Exactly. Yeah.
She makes it with assets under management. She makes it on, buying and selling. And, maybe she takes a percentage of profits if she gets any, but she's not going to lose any money if her funds are down. She's made her money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not discrediting Cathie. Anything can happen, but the problem is we're at all-time highs from here. And there's only one or two people saying there's significant upside from here, in the stock market. And I mean, if the Fed jumps back in, and the thesis is the Fed's going to jump back in as soon as we start to have a hiccup, and they're going to keep rates low, they're going to keep pumping money into the economy, they're going to reverse their course of action on the tapering and things like that to keep it all propped up. And if they continue to do that, I mean, there's no reason to believe things are going to come down anytime soon, as long as there's all this liquidity being pumped in. The question is, can they keep doing it?
Yeah. So that is actually going to be our topic for episode 2. Can the Fed be tough, or are they going to wilt? Greg, before we get to topic number 2, how can people follow you and get part of your world?
Yeah, gregdickerson.com. That's where all my info is. YouTube, podcast, everything is there. Go check it out.
Yeah, make sure you check him out because he covers lots of things that I do not. And I often work out to watching some of your videos. So thank you for doing all of that.